Welcome back to episode 2 of the Harloff Podcast. Very, very happy to bring you episode 2, and thank you to everyone who tuned in last week. Was very humbled. You guys got us to number 2 on TV and film, so thank you very much for doing that. If you're not familiar with the show, the first time you're tuning into it, pretty simple. I'm just going to talk to people, whether it be from the Schmoes crew or the Collider crew or anybody else, and just kind of get to know them a little bit more than just talking about movies. Movies might come up, but it's more about who the hell is that person. We know that the whole point of Schmoes and Collider is about personalities, and with that, you want to learn more about it. And who better for episode 2 with more of a personality than my next guest. I did a poll on my Twitter to see who people want to give them a couple choices of kind of who they wanted to hear from next. And overwhelmingly, this was the number 1 choice, and I was able to lock him down before he's, I'm sure, pulled out of his office, but I locked the door so he can't get out. Ladies and gentlemen, it's John Campea. What's up, John?
Hey, just a quick question. Was Mark Ellis on that poll?
No, he was not.
Damn it, I want to hold something else over him.
Yeah, right. No. We'll get to him eventually.
Yes, I'm sure we will.
But I wanted to talk to you. There's so much, because the good thing about that is that I had told you that I wanted to do something like this, I guess, a couple of months ago. And we both agreed, this would be cool to kind of learn more. Because I remember you said, that's something I would listen to.
Well, actually, it's funny because that's something I was back in... when we were moving into phase 3 of back when we were still AMC, and we had decided to do Heroes, and we had decided to do Jedi Council, and we had decided to do Rewind and things like that. One of the shows that we really seriously looked at was going to be called Spotlight.
Okay.
And it was going to be very similar to like this, to what you're doing now. We were thinking about, we can get a Harloff on, then we can go out and we get, Jeremy Johns, but then we can look also beyond the movie sphere. And we just didn't feel like we were ready at the time. So when you came to me with this idea, I thought, no, this is the right time for something like this. Is a great idea. So I'm really glad you're doing this.
Yeah, it's fun, and I think that last week I was able to kind of find out a little bit more about Miri, and this year, this time, it's 2 Canadians back to back.
Yes.
So that's what I wanted to kind of get into. Is just like, who the hell was John Campea? Like growing up, like were you someone that you knew right away? Because you got a strong personality. You're someone who's pretty creative. Like you're one of those dudes, and I've always told you, I know that if there's something, you see something, you go for it. Was that was from the second you were little, or does that take time to grow into?
I think it comes and goes in phases. I mean, the one thing that I've always had instilled in me is if there's something that I want, I go for it. But a lot of people will say they do that, but they have different definitions about what going for it means. Some people think going for it means a short sprint. Some people think it means, oh, I want that job, therefore I'm going to go apply for that job. And then if they don't get the job, then they abandon it.
You're talking long term.
Yeah, I'm talking long term, because one of the things, a rule I established for myself in high school, actually, this was the rule: know where I want to go. And then every day, and people who follow me on social media might have seen me tweet this or say this before, but every day, do something that gets you closer to achieving that goal. Just do something, no matter how big or how small. And that's the long game. I mean, look, if you wanted, and people would ask me all the time, like, John, how do I, in a modern context, they'd say, John, how can I work for Schmoes Know? Or how can I run my own slash film? Or how can I get to work for Fandango or whatever, right? And what people always want to hear is the magic bullet answer. Whenever people ask us that at conventions, and I know people ask you that all the time too, what they really want to hear is, John, how can I make my podcast have 1 million listeners? They want the magic bullet. They want to hear, put this plugin in your thing, or just do this in your introductions. No, it's a long-term goal where you just start off. So an example of doing what we do, what I would tell people is, just do something. You know what? Write an article today. Write an article today that you're just going to put on your Facebook notes. And even if like 5 people read it, and it's going to feel like it's wasted effort, it's not wasted effort. Do that. And I usually find that people who aren't willing to do that aren't really committed to what they want. Right. And that's not what people want to hear. So sometimes I'm not very popular for saying things like that.
But I think that's also the same reason why you are popular, is because you do say things like that. I think that's what people like. Your honesty is certainly one of the things. And I'll get into the first time I've heard about John Campea in a little bit. But I want to go back to that, though, because like, where did that come from, like as a kid? Because I know for me, like I was even talking about it last week, there were times in my childhood where I was kind of picked on, and I had to rely on kind of jokes, and I started to rely on on jokes and my love for movies and wrestling to like really start to drive my creativity and start to tell myself, because when you're younger, that's when you start to formulate your thoughts as far as who you are. You don't really understand who you are until I think much later in life. Like I didn't really
absolutely
totally discover who I was.
I know some 35-year-olds who still don't
don't know,
who
right?
they are.
Yeah, right. So like at what point like in your life, like when you're in like what was John Campea like at like 8 years old, 10 years old? Like who were you?
It's hard to remember anything about being 8, but a lot of people will find this very weird. But growing up and in high school, and my high school friends who knew me know this is true, incredibly shy, incredibly socially awkward. And before,
why was that? Do you know? Was it like just kind of?
I think it's an underlying lack of self-confidence, and like to a lot of people who would look at me today, that sounds totally alien.
Yeah.
Because
well, it does and doesn't for me.
Right. Well, because you know me.
Right. But at first, if you would have told me that I had seen your on-air personality, that's kind of what you're talking about. But yeah, so it was that. Did that come for like just with girls or with everyone in general?
Oh, dude, it came from everything. Like,
Yeah.
see, I was a virgin until I was 17 or 18 years
Interesting.
old. I mean,
Okay.
I didn't have a legit girlfriend till I was 18 or 19, and that was all like predicated on the fact that I was just too shy.
Right.
Like
You didn't find your power of speech yet.
No, I did not find my power of speech. But I mean, at the time, I still had that philosophy though that I knew what I wanted and I would do things. Now, at the time when I was like in grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, grade 10, I really wanted to be a musician. And
Is that where the breakdancing came from?
no, breakdancing was a little bit before that.
But you got to have confidence to breakdance.
Well, I mean, yeah, you do have to have. You know what? It's not about confidence. It's about.
Was that like your theater? Was that like because for me, stand-up comedy? Because I also a lot of times it's funny because sometimes for me, I'd be in a room and I could just talk to anyone, and then there's other times where I would just kind of clam up. But when I was on stage, it was like you couldn't. I had no fear because it was just me, and I was able to do whatever I wanted to do up there doing stand-up. So it was that kind of, and we joke about it, but with breakdancing, you kind of probably got that also a little bit.
Well, with me, with breakdancing, it was a little bit different. With breakdancing, it was just determination to do it, regardless. Like I was still scared crapless, and because I would participate in breakdancing battles, go to our local roller rink and weekly competitions. I eventually started breakdancing as a job. We actually used to get paid during the summers to go and perform at different things.
Who was paying you for that? That's amazing.
Well, I belong to a crew.
What are they called?
Is what the technical. It was called the Steel City Breakers at the time.
Steel City Breakers. I love it.
And it was a crew.
I have a DeLorean, I swear.
And we had a manager, and the manager would arrange for us to do like little performances at malls or things like that. And by
I'm picturing something like Straight Outta California Dreams or Saved by the Bell.
it was bad, dude. I mean, I had lightning bolts shaved in the side of my head that I then
God, where's
bleached.
Doc Brown when you need
I
him?
bleached the lightning bolts blonde. And all that kind of crap. And we would make $10 or $15, but when you're 14 years old,
that's a good amount.
It's like I'm getting some money to do this, which was kind of funny. So I would just overcome that. And then with music, I worked at music for a long time.
What'd you
man.
play?
Guitar and piano and keyboards.
And that's what you wanted to do for a long time. You thought you were going to be a musician.
Yeah, for a long time.
Singing
I thought I was
or just playing?
No, I did vocals. Actually, I did a lot of my own soundtrack on the movie I did a few years ago
cool.
too, and. I played in a U2 cover band. I played in.
You sang?
And I sang.
Dude, we got to do karaoke.
I love doing karaoke.
Yeah.
But it was weird because as nervous and as shy and as introvert as I was, when I would get on a stage, and it's true today, when I get on a stage, whether it's for playing my guitar or for doing public speaking or for I was fortunate enough to MC some Hall H stuff, doing that kind of stuff. For whatever reason, I feel right at home. The moment I come off stage, this is the weirdest thing. I can get on stage in Hall H, right?
In front of thousands of people.
In front of 6,000 people and do my thing, and it's cool. And I feel very comfortable when I'm at home. The moment I step off stage, though, and there's like 6 fans there who want to talk to me, I love that. I do. But I'm filled with anxiety immediately because I'm afraid. I'm so afraid of these 6 people.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid they're going to hurt me. I'm afraid that they're not going to like me. I was just up in front of 6,000 people, but as soon as I get in front of 6, I'm terrified.
What? But why? I mean, I understand that. Like I said, doing the reference to stand-up. But why do you think that is? Like, why do you think? What happened when you were a kid, or was it maybe something else? Like, just how you were. Like, why do you feel that way around people? Because sometimes, and you joke about it, you said this on air, so it's not like sometimes you feel you don't like people. There's sometimes you feel like there are other people that you do like. But what is it about that? Like, where do you think that stems from, the anxiety?
You know what? I honestly think it comes from a little bit of the fact that I never had any physical challenges growing up. Because, like, you look at me now, I'm just shy of 6 feet tall. I'm 220 pounds. I was this size in grade 9.
Okay, so that's got to be a little awkward. Do you get picked on sometimes, too?
No.
Okay.
See, but that's the thing. That was the problem. Like, I played all provincial basketball, like all that kind of stuff. I was athlete of the year in my school. I never faced any physical challenges.
Okay.
When you're in grade 9 and you were the size that I was, nobody ever picked on me.
Right.
And I think that I think I missed out on some character building opportunities in that, because when no one is ever there, when you never feel threatened physically, all I was left to feel insecure about was internally, I was afraid of what people would think of me socially. I was nervous and afraid, whereas I think, I have some other friends of mine who did like everybody else, got a little bit of bullying in school and whatever, but that made them very self-confident later on. And I think with me, because of the fact that I never did face any of that, I lost an opportunity to gain that kind of self-confidence in who I was. I never had to rely on who I was to avoid uncomfortable situations or whatever. And I think that has stayed with me the rest of my life, that I'm still, to this day, I'm very socially awkward.
Yeah, and I think that I again, like I said, I can totally understand that from being around the stand-up world, but I think that also from maybe whether it be the writing and then eventually evolving into your video persona, is that has been something, because you're certainly not shy when it comes to voicing your opinion.
No.
You're not shy when it comes to standing up for either a friend or an opinion that you truly feel strong about, which is why I think sometimes you can be a polarizing figure. Why is it, or I should say, like, where did it come from the first time where you stood up, and it doesn't have to necessarily be online, it could be any time where you stood up and you said, well, fuck yeah, this is who I am, I can be a voice, because you're a voice for many different things, whether it be, because I know that you can, I'm fascinated, what was your major in college?
Theology.
That was
my first round of college. Later I did law, but my first round of college was theology.
Both of those things, like the law thing, I get. Like when I hear law and I hear you, I go, yeah, of course. But the theology, are you a really religious man?
No, there was a period of time that I was, and I would still, to this day, I would consider myself a theist. I would consider myself a theist. I believe,
more spiritual, you
think?
I
believe in the spiritual. I believe in a lot of stuff. I believe in a lot of the tenets of the historic Judeo-Christian faith. There's a lot, but there's also a lot of things that made me leave the church at the time, particularly surrounding the issues of violence, of sex, of things like that, that I just found that I couldn't agree with. And yet, like, one of my best friends in the world, actually, one of my closest friends in the world is a guy by the name of Bruxy Cavey.
Canada kid?
A good Canadian kid, yeah. And he is actually the pastor of the largest church in Canada.
Oh, wow.
He has like a #1 best-selling book on that, and even though I'm not in the church anymore, he's still he's this great guy. He's a super long-haired hippie. He DJs on the weekends,
right?
For
Jesus.
fun. Yeah, it's kind of weird. So like right now I'm in this I'm a very ambiguous kind of figure when it comes to spirituality and things like that, because I'm very ambiguous in my own head that I'm not really sure.
Your family religious?
No. I grew up Italian Catholic.
Okay.
My real name's Giovanni, as a lot of people already know. But we were a very go to mass on Sunday Catholic.
Right.
And it didn't really
go to confession, everything's clean.
Yeah, we didn't even do that.
No,
very much. So I went to Catholic school, grade school, I went to Catholic high school. But my family was never very religious at all.
Okay. So how did you describe, what made you decide that that's what you wanted to study in school?
I just think I was fascinated by it at the time. Like, I've always been an incredibly curious person. I've never liked the status quo. I think that's why, like, today, when there's a very popular opinion, I tend to sit back and go, why is that a popular opinion? Why are we really buying into this? Right. And I think I was always very cynical on that sense. And so to like a 17 or an 18-year-old guy who's trying to wrestle with those types of questions, nothing is more deep than theology. I was really into theology, and plus at the time, I had a real desire to work with like 15, 16-year-olds who I saw were in a worse place than I was in. And I saw that as an avenue that I could actually work with kids and things like that. So I worked with kids for a number of years, and that was really fun, very fulfilling, some very cool stuff. But I never really found my footing about where I was going. I remember I had this one big moment because I pursued music for a lot of years, and I had this one big moment where I had to really sit down and think. I had been pursuing it for years. I had given it my all, and I had to just ask myself, can I really do this? I've given it everything. So now I got to make the decision, can I do it? And I just decided that I wasn't good enough.
What was the end goal if you decided that you were? Like if you decided that if that choice would have been like, you know what, no, I want to pursue this further. What was the end goal as far as studying theology and going?
Studying theology? I don't know if that I ever did have an end goal for that. No, not like I had an end goal for music.
Right.
Or
well, music I get to see more as it evolved. Like there's more that you could do, and that's kind of goes back into the creative space. But I'm so fascinated with that theology thing, like where you wanted, like when you originally went into that, like where you saw yourself going from there, like when you.
I don't really. I think I said because at the time of my life, it was very much a place that I was just being cynical about everything,
right.
And I just really, I like diving into deeper questions. I didn't really know where I was going from there, which was kind of refreshing. But I'm super glad that I did because I think having that background has given me an understanding into a lot of different groups of people that I think people who maybe don't have my background wouldn't have, and it's just another piece of the puzzle that makes me who I am.
Speaking of that, then we touched a little bit on the law, and the law to me is like almost like the origin of movie talk. Because law, I mean, for people, I know you've told this story sometimes on. Well, I think you might have even told it on Movie Talk at some point, but maybe even on one of your own shows. But for those of you who don't know, it's a fascinating story because you were set on being a lawyer. Like that's where you were going to go.
Well, actually, at the time I was. This is now going back to 2005, maybe 2004, 2005. I was working in a really prestigious law firm called the Morse Law Group in Hamilton, Ontario, and I was working in as a legal researcher and as a paralegal working in civil litigation, and mainly like accidents and personal cases and things like that. And that's what I was pursuing. I enjoyed it very much, and I knew what my career path was. And I had started the movie blog in 2003. Yeah. Now, this is just before I started going to school for law.
Which is ballsy when you say it now, and people are like, oh, okay, he started a blog. In 2003, nobody was really doing that.
Well, no. Actually, a lot of people had never even heard the term blog.
Right, exactly.
It sounds funny to say now, but think about this. Think about how hard it is to find a domain name.
Yeah.
TheMovieblog.com was available.
Right.
That's how long ago that was.
Right.
So I started that as a hobby because movies have always been my passion. I mean, I've told the story before that my earliest childhood memory is my mom taking me to see Star Wars. That became a very pivotal kind of definitive moment for me. And my life I've always been very passionate about movies. So I decided just for fun to start a movie blog. And, I had 11, 12 people read it the first month, which I thought was awesome. Mm-hmm. Then I had like 30 people read the next and 40. Well, now you fast forward a couple of years, and I had around 250,000 readers per month.
How'd that happen? Like, what caught on? Was there a particular article or?
No, it was just not at that time. At that time, it was just I just kept plugging away. I was writing like 6-7 articles a day. I was writing in my own voice. Even at the time. Like, to me,
this is before Twitter. There were no retweets.
Yeah, there was no retweeting. There was it was just that I'm also a big sports fan.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to bring a sports fan mentality to the world of film fandom. And so I would write in that voice. I would write in my sports fan voice.
Like Bill Simmons almost?
Yeah, very much like that, right? And so I would write that way, and it was also my way of saying, you know what, I'm going to say whatever I want to say. And I'm going to, regard whether it's popular or not popular, if anybody reads my stuff, whether they agree with me or disagree with me, they're going to know that that's what I think.
Right.
And then they can take that and decide how that impacts what they think.
Right.
Because I think if you're a writer or a commentator or a communicator of any kind, the goal is not to make people agree with you. The goal is to communicate in such a way that the people who agree with you walk away with a sharper understanding about why they agree with you, and that the people who disagree with you walk away with a sharper understanding about why they believe what they believe. And that's the goal of a communicator. Some people have the mistaken impression that being a communicator means getting more people to agree with you.
Right.
That's not the case. That's being a politician.
Right.
Being a communicator is helping people more clearly define what it is they think and help evolve what they think as you evolve what you think at the same time. So I was doing that with my website, And
it's like 2003 or so?
this is around 2004, 2005 now.
And then 2005 hits and you see this YouTube's.
What happened was I signed up for Google AdSense, which was a new thing where Google would put ads on your site. And I got my first check for $400. It was either $400 or $450. And at the time, my local newspaper ran a cover story on our paper. I think
and you're still in Canada at this point.
I was still in Canada at this point. I think I might actually have the newspaper article in my office. They're saying, local guy makes money writing on the internet. I mean, it was just an unheard of thing at the time. And so that triggered two of my best friends at the time, took me out to lunch, and it's what is known in my life as the intervention.
Yeah.
They took me out to lunch to a place called Filthy McNasty's.
That's amazing.
Which is a Canadian sports bar chain.
I want it to be like a really classy restaurant, though.
It's not. It was awesome, though. I love Filthy McNasty's. So they took me to Filthy McNasty's for lunch one day. And they said, and the reason we call it the intervention is because they said, you love this. You like your job. You like what you're doing with law.
These guys have worked with you to also? Or
no, these are just really good friends of mine. You like what you do in law. You do. You like your job. But you love movies. And you need to quit your job and you need to pursue this. It's one of the stupidest pieces of advice anybody could give you. But the fact of the matter is I've always been pretty good with my money. So I always save. So I had enough money saved away that I figured, you know what? I'll move into a crappy little apartment that has, I think the rent was like $400 a month. I'll move into a crappy little apartment. And even if I fail, I have enough money saved away that I can give this a good year. I can try this for a good year. And if I fail, then like music, I can say, you know what? I know that I tried my best and I had great experiences and it didn't work and I can live with that.
Right. What's the lady situation like at this point?
The lady situation at this point was bleak.
Okay. But there was no long-term girlfriend.
No, not at this point.
Because sometimes, and this is not to say anything against long-term relationships, but sometimes that's tough. If you're going to make a decision like the one you're making, and you're with somebody on a long-term, you're making decisions, especially, people our age too, and it's even 12, 13 years ago or whatever it was, you are sitting there, if you're with someone for a year, 2 years, you have to think of that other person as well.
Oh, absolutely. I had no kids. I was in no relationship at the time. And so I could make decisions like that because I only had me I had to worry about. So I dove in, started doing it. 250 changed to 350, 350 changed to 500,000. It started growing. I actually started making a living just off the Google ads. And then at some point, about a year after that, like Time Magazine came and did an article on me at the time.
Where's that? You have that too?
I have that around. It was called. The name of the article was "Boys Who Love Toys. There's a New Superpower in the World of Film." That was the name of, and it was written by an acquaintance of ours, Rebecca. She's now at the LA Times. She's now the lead writer for the LA Times. Rebecca Winter Keegan.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What's her name? And she wrote the article, and I remember they brought me down to Time. They brought these costumers in. They put me in these Jedi robes. They put me in the main photo shoot was me in these Jedi robes holding up a film reel, looking at a film reel like I was a director or something.
It almost sounds like a college recruiting like a football player before they join the team. Like that's where like that I could see you kind of looking at the canvas going, oh, wait a minute. And
that's when it became very real. And skipping a bunch of steps, another year or two later, AMC Theaters called. They said, we want to start this thing. We think you're the guy to do it for us.
Now, this is before or after you sold Movie Blog?
Well, I sold the Movie Blog twice.
Okay. How do you do that?
Well, what happened? The first round.
I wish I could. How the fuck did you do that?
The first round was I sold the Movie Blog because this company offered to pay a decent amount of money for it and to keep me on and pay me a full-time salary to run it. And a friend of mine, too, who was writing for me at the time.
Was it something like the rights revert back to you type deal or something?
No. It's a little convoluted. So basically what happened was the guy who bought the site was this guy who a lot of people give the credit for creating MySpace.
Tom?
Yeah, no, everybody asked that. Was it Tom? No. His name was Brad Greenspan.
Okay.
And he owned another company that had this big studio right in the heart of Hollywood. And I started a video show. And I started shooting out of their studio for this other company. And one of the guys working at that company as their vice president of production was this dude by the name of Dennis Zen.
Oh, wow.
And that is where Dennis and I first met. This is going back like 8 years ago now.
Yeah.
Dennis and I first met because he was working for this Brad guy as well. And I was working for him, and we were in the same place.
Was Brad the guy that was also working Clever TV and stuff too? Is that the guy that did Clever?
I can't remember. He
Because Dennis worked for Clever for a little bit.
He did, no, but this is totally separate. This is like,
okay.
that was years later.
Okay.
But he got involved in a lot of different things. And like, we used to joke around that he was the anti-Midas. Everything he touched turned to lead. And eventually what started happening was the payments that he owed me, because they were paying off the purchasing of the movie blog in installments. Plus, I was supposed to have a housing allowance for agreeing to live in LA while I was doing it. Plus this, plus that. And the company started missing a lot of my payments. And eventually, fortunately, because I had a bit of a law background, I knew what my options were. And I told them, hey, look, either you pay me everything up front now, what you owe me, or I'm taking back the movie blog. And because, it's my legal right. You have forfeited on this, basically. So now pay me everything you owe me up front, or I'm taking it back, which was my legal right to do.
Right.
And he refused. He just wrote me this email mocking me and saying, let's see you try. I've got lawyers and blah, blah, blah. What I didn't know at the time, and I didn't realize this till I started looking into it later, their guy was supposed to transfer the ownership of the domain name under their new to their company. I gave them all the credentials to do it. They never did it. So this is now 2 years later, and I'm looking at it's like the domain name is still under my name. Great. Changed the password, redirected the domain name, and I locked them out, and I took my site back.
That's fantastic.
And then I later sold it again.
Right.
I later sold the site
You never really
again.
even kind of sold it the first time. It was all yours.
It was all mine.
They
And,
screwed it up.
and they screwed it up, and it was really too bad. And then years later, I sold it again because I was wanting to finance making my own movie, and that was a great thing. And then I worked for the site for a while until AMC called. Then I left my site, and the rest is history.
Have you ever disclosed how much you sold it for the second time?
No.
Okay. So then you talk about that whole story with this guy, and it just makes me, I got to ask it too, because we can get into it as we go down the road of AMC and everything too, but you have been, and not because you like to just do it because you feel like starting a fight, but you have been in a couple of feuds over your course of your career. There've been I've watched many of them and gotten a laugh out of some, but also been, I applauded you for some, but I think that there's, what is it about the scrap? That is it something that you also like that you enjoy sometimes, or is it sometimes you just got to voice the opinion? It doesn't matter, and we'll deal with what happens later on down the line.
I certainly don't enjoy conflict.
Okay.
Actually, I hate it. I hate, which again, on the surface, you'd look at me, you'd think I kind of relish in conflict or I thrive in conflict. I actually don't. I don't like conflict at all. But at the same time, I have a very low, and this I think I get from my father, I have a very low tolerance for bullshit.
Okay.
I have a very, very low tolerance.
Is it a temper also, or it's more, or is it also it's maybe a mixture of both?
Might be a mixture of both. I mean, I have a very interesting temperament in that some people get mad every once in a while, and it's moderate mad. I very rarely get mad, but when I get mad, I get really mad.
Right. Like yelling, you can have yelling fits.
Oh yeah. I have no qualms about yelling at somebody if I think they deserve it or whatever.
I can tell you that you've changed though. In my perspective, I think that when I first met you, and I don't know, maybe it's because you're more comfortable around me too, and more. But and correct me if I'm wrong, but when we started doing AMC, there was more. It was more like, that's the boss man. He's here. Let's do our work. Let's go. And there's something to me. It seemed like it shifted to where like, yeah, this is work. I'm the boss man. But let's have some fun too. And because it seemed at first it was like maybe, and like I said, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed at first it was like, this is my thing. I've been doing my thing for a while. I definitely want to hear your opinions. Go do your thing. But now it's my show. I got to go. And then something to me kind of shifted to where it's like, you know what? I trust in these people. Let's make it our show.
Well, I think what you saw was from the perspective of somebody who was kind of new to my circle.
Yeah.
Like Dennis, for example, who had already been, now at that point, had already been with me for a couple of years. Dennis, I trusted implicitly. I mean, like 9 times out of 10, maybe 8 times out of 10, if Dennis has a different opinion than me, I will usually lean towards what Dennis thinks. Just because, and I will do that with people that I really know and that I really trust. But that goes back to my social awkwardness. It takes me a while to really trust somebody. I can like somebody, but especially for something like at the time AMC, which we were not ready for the kind of success we had with AMC. Like we knew we would succeed, but I don't think we knew to what level we were going to succeed and the type of growth we would get and how much the company would invest in us and all that kind of stuff. But at that point now we were in what, 2012, 2013.
That's when it started, the AMC?
No. But by the time you came on.
I came on, yeah, 2000. Well, late 2013 is when I made my first guest appearance. And then I became an official member in early 2014. So
at that point, it had been 5, 6, 7 years since the intervention.
Okay.
And you got to understand, everything, there's a linear line for me when I look at what I'm doing now directly to that intervention incident and everything I've done and I've built and I've worked on and all that kind of crap. So here we were at AMC now, going back to late 2013, early 2014. And now we were bringing more and more people on. And one of the things that I really wanted to instill, and to this day, I still do this, like even with our Film HQ people, I instill this into all of them right away. It's like, you got to understand, this is my baby.
Right.
You don't understand how many years I have put into this, how much effort, what sacrifices I have made, all that kind of stuff, right? Because I really want people to understand that when they would come on and work with me on something, what an act of trust that is for me to hand that over. Because to a degree, and this is something that I work on a lot, like I am a control freak.
Right.
And that's a good thing and it's a bad thing. The bad things are obvious. The good things are not so obvious. I don't think I ever would have been able to accomplish half of what I have if I wasn't, to a degree, a control freak. So whenever I bring somebody into my circle, that's actually an act of me relinquishing some control. Because I can't control what Kristian Harloff's going to do. I can't control what Mark Ellis is going to do. I can't control what a John Schnepp is going to do. So when I bring people into my circle, it is really a terrifying act of trust on my part. And I just try to impart to people when they start working with me, you got to understand what this means for me, for you to come on and work this. But at the same time, when we started AMC, like early with AMC, there was me, there was Amy Rose, there was Dennis. Even before Amy Rose, there was Roth Cornett, who's now at IGN.
Right.
And it was always very much a let's have fun, this is our team, let's go. Somebody new would come in. And that's like when Amy Rose first came in. Understand, Amy Rose, this is my baby. I've sacrificed years for this, blah, blah, blah. But eventually it became her thing as well. Because then I trusted her,
right,
like I trusted Dennis. And then we would expand and grow. And then Schnepp came on, and now I trust Schnepp. Then you and Mark came on, and I trust you guys implicitly. And, it just became, it's a process for me of personality that all goes back to what we started talking at the beginning, that I'm very insecure, I'm socially awkward, I don't trust people immediately. And it takes a lot for me to begin to trust somebody. But once I do, then I would trust them with my life.
I guess two questions I have after hearing all that too. How do you think the people that work with you see you, and how do you feel people who don't really know you, maybe in our circle of people that we work with, have a perception of you that don't know you?
Oh, that's a good question. Perceptions are difficult things.
Yeah.
And I'll answer the question. Let me preface the question with this. I very early on realized I can't worry too much about what other people think.
Sure.
Only because, not because I don't care about what other people think, but because I realized very quickly that...
It's like a troll comment.
Well, in some way, but I also understand that nobody outside of my circle, whatever circle that is we're talking about, nobody knows the full story. Whatever the situation is, whatever the circumstances are, nobody knows the full story. So if somebody has a positive reaction to something I think or do, I can't really take a lot of credit for that because they're feeling positive, but they're feeling positive without knowing the full story. If somebody feels negative about something, the way I do something or something that I did, I can't really blame them all that much because they don't know the full story.
Right.
So because of that, I realized early on I can't worry too much about what other people think. All I can worry about is, am I doing right by the people I'm dealing with? Am I doing right by this entity we're creating? And am I doing right by myself? And if I can honestly check off those three boxes and feel comfortable that I'm doing that, then I let the chips fall where they want. And so I don't normally really worry about that. As far as like the people who work with me goes, all I know, and my biggest thing of pride, I guess, is that the people I have wanted to continue to work with, going all the way back with Dennis, getting on 8 years now with me and Dennis, have always stayed working with me. I mean, the one big exception to that would be Roth Cornett, but with Roth, it was, I mean, I helped her leave because like she had grown, at the time AMC was only at a certain size, right? And we didn't have a full-time thing for her. And she was so talented and so good at what she did that I started writing letters with her to other companies around town to that may have full-time opportunities. And I remember getting on the phone with the head guy over at IGN, and I told him, "You're an idiot if you don't hire Roth Cornett." And then Roth went off and worked with IGN, and she did that for a number of years, and now she's over at HitFix, and she's still friends with us to this day. But, I mean, the biggest thing of pride that I have is that, like, the people who really know me have continued working with me. I mean, you know, Denizen has had opportunities to do other things in the past 8 years.
Right.
A lot of when you get a guy who's that smart and who knows that much. And I really... I take a lot of pride in the fact that I like working with the same people, and I take a lot of pride in knowing that those people like working with me. So that's all I can really do.
Fair enough. And jumping into that relationship with AMC, and that we were there for a while. You were there obviously longer than myself and Mark, and you and Dennis kind of built this thing in Movie Talk. And so let's talk about the 2 times you said, "I'm done."
Right.
Now, the first time was in AMC, and that was just about a year ago or so.
It was last May. Yeah,
last May. Because for me, I didn't know what was happening. You hear rumblings and stuff of what's going down, but I didn't know if you were leaving, what was going to happen, what like Mark and I were going to do, all that stuff. Were you at all ever conflicted with going, "No, I'm going to stay"? Because it seems to me a lot of times, because you are a guy that like you said before, it's big picture for you too. So maybe if you don't feel like you've done, it was like studying theology again, AMC, to where it's like, I've hit everything that I can do here. There's nowhere else to go. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out like why it was no more AMC. I'm done. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to go bring back my own blog. And then how that turned into, well, wait a minute. What's this Collider thing?
Right. Yeah. So this is one of those situations where most people don't really know the whole story, and unfortunately, it's got to kind of stay that way. But
you say what you can.
I get very upset when I think people who are on my team get mistreated. I get very upset. I mean, I just put up a Facebook post about people complaining about our Game of Thrones commentary.
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, I get very upset when I think people on my team get mistreated. And
hold that thought for a second. Do you ever write something? Because I read that, and it was full of passion, and it was also because the things that they were saying about Makuga and other people too. Do you ever write or say something and look back and go, "That might have been a little harsh"?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. But if you don't, you're probably not doing it right. If you don't think you've gone over the line a little bit too much, then that means you're afraid of getting close to the line. And I'm not. And sometimes I go over, and I deal with those repercussions as I go.
Fair enough. Sorry to go back to what you were saying.
But it's a good question.
Yeah.
So there was a guy at AMC who's actually the guy who recruited me initially to work at AMC, and he was my boss at AMC. He was my direct line of communication to AMC Theaters. He was the guy who brought me in and all that kind of stuff. And it had been, I mean, he and I had a very unusual boss-employee relationship, because I would scream at this dude, and we would have epic yelling and screaming matches, me and him. But we trusted each other. Like, we trusted each other completely. I remember there was this one time where we did our 100 million view party. Mm-hmm. And during the broadcast, we had a rule, no swearing on our shows. But during our broadcast of the 100 million view party, I think I dropped an F-bomb.
You did.
But it was very...
It was a good one, too.
It was a very purposeful, plotted out F-bomb. And my dog's barking in my office next door. So he came over to he was in town because of the 100 million view party. He came over to my apartment to say, we need to take that down, edit it, and re-put it back up. Right. And I remember he and I got into this screaming match in my apartment. I thought the neighbors were going to call the cops, but But we could do that because we trusted each other, right? We trusted each other. We knew we could yell at each other, and we knew we can compartmentalize our arguments and our debates, because as soon as we finished talking about that one issue, we're going out and having a beer.
Right.
Well, he would have a beer, I'd have a Diet Coke. And that was the thing. But I trusted this guy. Like, that's how much trust I had in this guy. And something happened at the company where I felt he was treated very unfairly. And that really pissed me off. And I remember it put me in a position where I was talking to the vice president of the company. I said, look, if I don't stand up for the guy who I work for, how are the people who work for me, how are they ever going to believe that I will stand up for them? And that's how I truly felt. And so I went and I met with AMC a number of times, and the situation got a little bit more convoluted than that. And it wasn't the company's fault as a whole. I know that sounds strange, and I can't go into details, but for the most part, this was a great company. The CEO was on our side. The chief marketing officer was on our side. Our vice president was on our side. They were all great, wonderful people. I loved working with them. And it was because of those people that it broke my heart that I finally had to say, this situation to me is unacceptable. And I got to leave. And I felt that I could leave because at that time, like, I wasn't worried that if I leave, everybody's going to lose their job. I wasn't worried about that because we had grown it. AMC valued AMC Movie News, which is what we were doing at the time. We had a great team on board. I've always had the utmost confidence that Dennis could pick up whatever I do and lead it from there. And so I felt very passionate that I needed to leave in a way of standing up for my friend, as well as some other things that went on. But I also felt like I really did like the company still, and I wanted AMC Movie News to continue, and I really felt like none of the jobs of the people who worked for me were in jeopardy. And so, believing all of that and feeling that all of that was in place, I made the decision I was resigning. The CMO and the vice president of the company flew down here to Los Angeles, tried to talk me out of it one more time, and I really appreciated their efforts, but I said no. And that's how that all kind of transpired. What happened then, though, is that the situation created a lot of upheaval at AMC. And before I knew it, the director of our department was gone. The manager of our department was gone. The vice president of our department had just resigned. And the CEO was resigning all at the same time. Not all completely unrelated to this one situation. And so what happened was the CMO, he's a terrific guy, very smart dude. He came down here and to kind of evaluate where AMC Movie News was at. But he then told me that shutting down AMC Movie News is on the table. To me, that was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because of how much we were getting, millions upon millions
Just
of
hit
viewers.
300,000 subscribers, I think.
We had just hit
right?
300,000 subscribers. We were hitting like 8 million viewers a month. These were all people who are now associated. Now, these were 8 million new people who, when they thought of going to the movies, they would now think of AMC. It was creating incredible brand loyalty. Our CMO recognized that, but because of all the upheaval that was going on, and because they didn't know our team the way I knew our team, they had some doubt that the operation could continue without me, and they said they were going to pull the plug. Well, that panicked me, because now, not only was I leaving and going to do something else, now I'll never forget that staff meeting we had in this room.
Yeah.
We were at the board table, and I was explaining everything, and I remember, I think Jonathan was one of the guys who was just really emotional. It was like, it just is insane to me, Jonathan was saying that this team not being together anymore. And I just remember thinking, this is a disaster. So I was looking at doing one thing for myself. But then an opportunity came along with Complex.
Yeah. How'd that all go down?
I got a call from Steve Weintraub, who's the head of Collider.com.
Frosty, for some people that don't know.
Frosty, to some of you don't know. Because he knew I was available. And I wasn't making public what my next plan was. I was excited about my next plan.
Can you talk about any other options that were on the table besides that? I'm very curious. Anything like any one that you can share that's maybe hasn't been in the past?
No, I can't.
Not even one?
I can't.
All right.
But I had, it had been a few weeks since I announced that I was leaving, and I had several options on the table, and I was really excited about one until I found out that AMC was going to be shutting down AMC Movie News. So I get a call from Frosty, and he says, I really think you need to talk to Complex, because Complex had just bought Collider from Frosty, and he had a very good experience with them. He goes, I really think you need to talk to these guys. I'm like, all right. So I got on the phone with their executive vice president. His name's Scott. And I got on the phone with him, and he gave me this pitch about what his vision was and what we could do. And I thought, this sounds interesting. Let's keep talking. A little bit later, I'm talking to the CMO from AMC again, because he and I were still on very good friendly terms. We would check in with each other.
Right.
And he dropped the idea to me. He said, what would you think about taking everything with you? What would you think about taking the new studio? What would you think about taking the team? What would you think about taking the Movie Talk name and the Mailbag name and the Hero? Like, what would you think about taking all that with you? You can make that a part of your new gig with Complex. And we as AMC will sponsor it on an ongoing basis. At that point, that made up my mind, because now I had a way of keeping everybody's jobs, keeping the team together. Because more than anything else, I loved our team. I mean, I just loved being a part of our team and all that kind of stuff. And I decided that if we can save everybody's jobs, we can keep this team together, and the fans love the content we're creating, if we can keep that going, that's valuable to me. And we get to keep, because like I said, even though I had this point of frustration with AMC, I still loved the company. And I thought, if we can stay associated with AMC at the same time, to me that was a win-win-win. And I talked to everybody here about it. I brought it up and I said, the first guy I talked to was Dennis, and then I believe you were the second guy I talked to. And
it was because Schnepp and Ellis, because of budget reasons at first, it was a matter of, I think that Schnepp, Ellis, and Dennis were kind of locked in to go, and I was doing stuff with Fandango and other stuff to where it was, and because you were frank, you're like, there's a matter of budget I have right now.
Yep.
But I'll be able to do more down the line. This is something that I've said to you off air many times, and I don't know if I've said it on air, but I have no problem saying it. You and I work creatively together very well.
Yeah, we do.
So we had a meeting in your office to where you were up front, and you had said to me, listen, right now I have a limited budget of what I can work with. I am confident enough that we're going to build this thing out, and I want you to bring Jedi Council over here, because I don't want to lose you, because I know that if you go somewhere else, you're going to be doing stuff. But this is what I have right now. And I took that. And I said, I trust in this guy that he has said these things. And it worked itself out within a month or two, because Jedi Council started doing the numbers we knew it would, and Movie Talk started doing the numbers we knew it could. So, yeah, that's kind of how I came on a little bit afterwards when we had our meeting.
Yeah, and it was tough, because even though I was really excited that we were able to keep the team together and all that kind of stuff, the fact of the matter was, our budget in year 1 with Complex was not going to be the same as our budget on year 5 with AMC. So we were now working with a smaller budget. And I remember I sat down with you and we had that conversation. Look, I can't do this with you, but stick with us, and I promise we'll grow it, because I believe that this is going to work. But it also there was some hard decisions that had to be made too. I mentioned Jonathan earlier. Right. Jonathan was one of our key behind the scenes guys, and we didn't have the money to bring him over with us. That sucked. Alicia Malone was one of our key on camera.
A lot of people ask about that. A lot of people ask why, because Alicia, obviously, we both have tremendous respect for Alicia,
yes,
and what she brings to the. I mean, look at her; she's crushing now over a Fandango and Today's Show. She's doing really well. And people asked that right away, as we saw every other comment, was what happened with Alicia? Why? Because there's been some people in the past that maybe weren't working out for some reasons, but that wasn't the case with Alicia.
No, it wasn't the case with Alicia at all. With Alicia to this day, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Alicia Malone. And unfortunately, and this was part of the reality, and again, this goes back to, I can't worry about what other people think, because they don't always know the whole story. Alicia was doing an amazing job hosting Rewind and hosting AMC Independent. I was very proud of both of those shows. I especially Alicia and Amy Rose Eisenbach kind of spearheaded developing and growing AMC Independent, and when I handed that over to Amy Rose to do, and Amy Rose unfortunately left because she was pursuing other things and she was retiring from our industry, and that sucked.
Yeah.
But
I'll never forget your face when you told me that at the ArcLight.
I was not happy.
No, it looked like someone. It looked like someone had just passed away.
Yeah. No, I mean, I understood why Amy Rose and I get together all the time now, and. But I understood it. She wanted to do something else and move into a different industry, and I totally understood that. So that left Alicia to run it, and Alicia was doing a great job. The unfortunate reality was that our two lowest viewed shows were Rewind and AMC Independent. They were our two lowest viewed shows. Now, at AMC, that didn't really matter because we weren't about the views. We were about creating a well-rounded product because we were more of a marketing tool at AMC.
Right.
Coming over to Complex was a different story. We weren't a marketing tool anymore. We had to generate money, which meant we had to generate viewership and stuff like that. And so when it came down to, I'm not going to be able to keep everybody, the unfortunate black and white numbers were that even though Alicia is one of the smartest people we have working for us, we don't have room in the budget to bring her with us. And that killed me.
Right. But there's no hard feelings with you guys at all.
No, I certainly hope not. Alicia and I have chatted on several occasions, and I certainly don't feel like there's any hard feelings from her. There's certainly no hard feelings from me. I mean, obviously because I was the one on the better end of the stick, unfortunately. But I really, that was the one part about the move over here that I did not like, was the fact that we had to lose. But it was a question to me at the time. Can I save 8 jobs and lose 1 or 2, or do I lose them all? And I made the decision to save as many as I could to keep this thing going. And Alicia has done
she's doing all right.
Just fine.
She's doing pretty
Alicia
good.
does pretty damn good
It's the butterfly effect.
Because she's Alicia.
Yeah.
She'll always land on her feet.
All right, now we're going to fast forward because we bring it over. You pretty much did what you said you were going to do. You built more jobs. You were able to bring Jonathan back. So
which I was really excited about.
We got more budget because we started to produce the numbers. I think Complex or Collider Video went from something like 16,000, and now as we stand today, we're over 250,000 a year later. But before we got to that 200,000, announcement number 2 comes as far as you're leaving again.
Yeah.
Now that one to me, I'm going to tell the Sundance story. To where I was at Sundance, and because you and I had a conversation in your office maybe 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, and I said, I got an idea. And you said, well, what is it? I said, what if we did the Schmodown as a weekly show? And before I even say show, you're like, I love it. Like, that'll work. And I'm like, and then we started going over the WWE feel of it and the kind of matches, and you're like, yeah. And we started coming up with that idea and started coming up with a few more shows and ideas, and it's like this whole big thing was starting to happen. So fast forward 3 weeks later when I'm in Sundance, text, can we talk? Sure. And I'll never forget this. I'm laying in bed at Sundance, and you said to me, I'm stepping away from Collider. And I remember I didn't control what I said, and I went, oh, come on!
Yeah, that's exactly what you said.
And I'm like, dude, we're working on some great things. What's happening? What was happening?
It's another one of those situations where I can't go into all of it. There certainly was something that happened, but besides that one, there was an issue. But outside of that issue, there was another truth. And that other truth was, I had been running Movie Talk, and by extension, everything that we had developed and grown for so long. And in the past year, I had been offered some interesting opportunities. And I always had to go, I can't. I just can't. I'm way too busy with what I'm doing with Collider Video right now. I just can't. And I was having to say I can't a lot. At the same time, I was looking around, and not only were we able to bring Jonathan back, but we were able to add a few more staff and a few more team members, and our growth quarter over quarter was growing every quarter without exception. Actually, month by month, viewership was growing. We were peaking like 11 million views a month now. Everything was growing. Everything was in place, and this one incident came up that I'm not going to go into details because I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus. But an incident came up that I didn't like, but it made me then really evaluate the scenario and the situation, where I had to go, have I done a good enough job as the quote-unquote leader of this thing that I can step away and it can keep going? And do I believe in the people here enough that I believe if I step away, it will not only keep going, but it'll keep thriving? And I decided that the answer to that question was yes, that I believed that we had built the structure, that we had the right people in place, that all the people who are in place have been at it long enough. Everybody in our inner circle knew how to run this place and knew how it would best run. And therefore, then I started looking at these other opportunities again. It's like, it's time. And I just decided that it was time. So I said, now, there were a few things that had to get done first that I knew, but for me to leave, I need a few things done first. First of all, we didn't have you and Mark under a contract yet.
Right.
And we were working to get you and Mark a certain deal that would ensure your guys' security, ensure your role here at the place, and the extra things we all wanted to do.
Yes, and that's something that I should say as well. When that conversation that was coming in with the Schmodown, John was instrumental in bringing in Schmoes to Collider and Complex, because what we had, and it's funny because where our relationship first stems when I joined AMC, it was almost like, Schmoes was the elephant in the room at one point.
Yes.
And then after working together for a while, it stopped becoming the elephant and started becoming like a family member, to where it's like, okay, but let's make it official. Let's unite the clans, if you will, from Braveheart. And we did that because, and you were working on it. You were the one. We were on conversation with the Complex with you, bringing over Schmoes. So the reason that you do have Schmoes in the Collider Studios was absolutely John was instrumental in all that. So I've said it before, but just in case you didn't know it.
Yeah. So I had made the decision, but I didn't want to go until there were a few loose ends. Number one, I wanted to make sure we got the new Schmodown Trivia Show locked up. Number two, I wanted to make sure we got you and Mark's your contracts and your deals done. And there were a couple of other deals for a couple of other people as well that I wanted. But that all happened rather quickly. Once I knew I was going to go, we were able to wrap all that stuff up probably within a month after that. And then I might have just been 2 or 3 days after we announced that those deals were done that I then felt okay to announce that I was moving on from Collider.
Right.
And again...
How hard is that to do, though? It's got to be really tough because it is like your kid.
It's...
At one point, because you got to be looking, because I know you trust us. I know that you know that we're gonna be able to do things, and we have, and we've the shows are doing good. And you look back, do you ever think, you want to grab it, but then you're like, no, I can't touch it.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, and it's an awkward situation too. It's not a bad awkward, but it's an awkward situation because, eventually I had several options and opportunities. I decided to work with Lionsgate and Comic-Con on this new Comic-Con HQ thing with Complex. I brought Complex into it as well. And so my office is still here in the studio we built a little over a year ago.
Right.
So I'm still here. And are there times, and look, you understand, Dennis and I, like you and I, for instance, we talk every day. Dennis and I go out like 3 times a week. And it is everything in me to keep my stupid mouth shut when because look, I'll be honest.
George Lucas.
Yeah, but except I do keep my mouth shut because look, I trust you and I trust Dennis and I trust everybody in leadership here. But there are things that you guys have done that I wouldn't do. But one of the things I said at a staff meeting before, because Complex also decided to do some things that I would have allowed to happen if I were here. But one of the things I said at a staff meeting with you guys that I sat in on was, look, one of the most exciting things about regime change, one of the most exciting things about leadership change is the fact that new leadership is going to try something old leadership wouldn't have tried. And sometimes those things work out to be amazing. It's an exciting time. And so does Dennis sometimes do things that I wouldn't do? Yeah. Do you sometimes do things that I wouldn't do? Yeah. But the only time you'll hear me talk negative, like the only time you, Kristian Harloff, will hear me talk negative is when I think somebody above you is mishandling you. Mm-hmm. The only time Dennis hears me say anything negative is when I think those above Dennis are mishandling Dennis. You will never hear me tell you, unless you come to me and ask me for an opinion, you'll never hear me come into here and say, Kristian, this thing you're doing on Schmodown is dumb. Or Dennis will never hear me go into his office and say, Dennis, you just put this person on this? What are you, crazy? I am very proud of myself being the control freak that I am.
I only got that once from you.
Really? What was it? What was it on?
I don't know if we should talk about it on here, but I'll talk about it. But we did only once. It was about a potential hire. Is what I.
Oh yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
But even then, that potential hire it became an issue because once again I really believe in the people who work with me. Right. It involved another person involved.
No.
So I do remember that.
Yeah, but that was completely different.
Yes, it was a totally different situation.
Yes.
But I just look at where things are at now, and I'm so thrilled to seeing how well you and Mark are thriving. I've been super excited to see how well Schmoes Know has been doing since it moved over to Collider. Because I remember one of our very first conversations when you came to me to inquire about working with me at AMC. I said, well, dude, you got the Schmoes Knows thing going. I can't help but wonder if maybe you should just focus all your attention on that. We talked through all that kind of stuff. But then I remember us sitting down in the AMC office and me saying to you, this is years ago, saying, dude, just know that if this thing works the way I think it's going to work, at some point, you're either going to have to leave Schmoes, or you're going to have to just bring the whole thing over and just make it all one thing. Yeah. And then fast forward a few years later, here we are today. Yeah, and I love seeing how great you guys are doing, how great the trivia show is doing. I love the trivia show.
You and I were hoping for 50,000 an episode.
Yes.
For that show, and
it's far exceeded that. And I think it's very fun and entertaining. I love the fact that going to be expanding it with the tag team division. I just think it's great, and seeing the way I love seeing Wendy more integrated into like movie talk now, and there are some things I'm not thrilled with. I'm not going to be disingenuous, but again, it's exciting to see things being tried that I never would have tried, and just see how they work out.
So you go, and now you're doing. So like you said, you're working with Lionsgate. How's that been since the transfer? You're over now at Lionsgate, Comic-Con HQ.
Yeah,
it's like you feel. I can see when you're working with your new crew, and you're pretty excited. You got that fire in you. How's the show been going so far? Things you like, things you don't like, things you want to improve.
I'm stupid thrilled with how the show's been going, and it's really kind of funny because week after week, the head guys at Lionsgate, they come to the studio when we shoot, and just every week this is the only show that we just come to watch.
It's awesome.
Because we have to be involved with all the other shows in the network. You guys just know what you're doing. We got told we're the number one show on the network right now. Now that Mark Hamill's coming over, that might change pretty soon.
You got to get him on the show.
Oh, he's coming.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he's coming.
Good.
No, I've been excited about that for a long. They let me in on that coming together a while ago, and it's just having to keep my mouth shut for so long. And seeing Mark Hamill come over is great. Kevin Pereira has been producing great stuff. Adam Sessler's been doing some really interesting stuff. I'm really excited about that. But I love our team. And, I've got some people working with me. Schnepp and I have been on-camera partners now for like 4 or 5 years. And so, when I was leaving, I told Schnepp, I said, one way or another, you and I have to find a way to keep working together. And he's like, fuck yeah, we do. Right. And so it's great that Schnepp is on that show with me. We got Josh McCouga is our lead writer. Wow, he's been, and honestly, he's been thriving. Never tell him that. But
no, he won't.
He's honestly been thriving.
He won't even know how to find this on iTunes.
No, he probably wouldn't. But he's been doing great. We found some terrific new talent, like this girl, Haletta.
Yeah, we've been talking about her. She's like superstar.
Oh yeah, she's not going to be with me for long because at some point NBC is going to come along and pick her up.
That good, huh?
She's that good. Oh. She's honestly just spectacular. And we've had great people like Scott Mance involved and Clark Wolf, and we got Whitney Moore from Nerdist fame. She's been doing so. I mean, so I love the show. I sit back and I watch the show each week, just thinking, this is a damn good show. And honestly, television. Any television network, anything on the streaming services, whatever. I think this is the best movie show that what we do that movie fans would actually like better than anything on television right now. And that's mostly because of the people that are working with me and that I work for, and it's been going great. And I'm very excited. I've got some other shows in the works. I'm still producing other content as well. You and I might actually be working on something, which I'll leave that to you if you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we can. There's something. I mean, I won't go into specifics what it is, but I came to John with a scripted idea, and he's on board, and we're going to start kind of developing it.
Yeah, and I love it, and I absolutely love it. And see, these are the things that it's these types of opportunities. Like 6 months ago, you couldn't have come to me and said, hey, John, I got an idea for a scripted series. Can you develop with me? I just, no way, man. I got no time, nothing. Schnepp can come to me with an idea and say, let's develop this. And I would say, no, I got no time. But now, not only do I have this really fun show that I'm getting so much out of with HQ, but I'm able to get involved in these types of projects now and work with people that I like working with, like you and like Schnepp, to develop new things. And it's exciting. And I kind of get the best of both worlds because, part of my agreement with Complex was that I would stick around and continue to do Heroes and Jedi Council.
Right.
And the odd movie review and commentary.
Which they've been great about, by the way, too. The fact that it was like we were talking before, there's sort of kind of regime changes in AMC, as where there was never anything with the higher ups at Complex ever. It was always a matter of very understanding and kind of like, they had kind of transitioned myself, Dennis, all that stuff in there. So like, just so people know out there too, Complex has been nothing but amazing.
Complex has been great. Actually, the higher ups at Complex, I mean, it was very well documented around here. Complex is situated in New York. They made several trips to LA,
right.
The leadership of Complex, to try to talk me out of it. And I love these guys. These are great guys.
Yeah.
I love working with these guys. And so I was really thrilled when we were able to come up with a way for me to continue working with Complex in the Film HQ department in cooperation with Comic-Con and Lionsgate, and also with the fact that they wanted me, and I wanted to do it. They wanted me to stick around and still have a presence with Collider here, and they have been spectacular and awesome, and it's been a lot of fun.
All right, we've been over an hour here. Look, this is something we're going to have to talk to you again, because I didn't get to talk to you about how you met your beautiful wife, and we're going to get into the relationship with Schnepp, more Dennis stuff. There's so much more that I can talk to you about, so this certainly isn't the last time we're going to have you on here. But I did want to thank you for coming on and sharing the stories that you did share, but also let them know exactly where they can find Comic-Con HQ.
So you can sign up. This is the great thing about Comic-Con HQ right now. I mean, it is going to be a paid monthly service. It's $5 a month, so I mean, less than a soda at a movie, but you head on over to www.comic-conhq. It's a terrible URL. It is. But that's what it is. It's
not 2002 anymore. They can't.
No, yeah. It is www.comic-conhq.com, and you can sign up for a free trial, and you've got until after Comic-Con this year to decide if you think what you're getting is worth your $5 a month. Right now it's available on mobile devices and on your computer and your browser, but by the time we get to Comic-Con, it's going to be on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire Stick, Xbox, PlayStation. The channel will be on all those things. So it's not just Film HQ. There's a lot of great shows and great content and movies and documentaries and all this kind of stuff. Plus, Comic-Con HQ is going to be putting up the Hall H panels.
Yeah.
On Comic-Con HQ. Right. Now, you won't necessarily see all the sizzle reels. They might have to turn the cameras off because that's the studio's decision. But you'll get all the Hall H panels.
Every single one.
Every single one. I'm very excited about it. That's actually when Lionsgate was first pitching me the idea of Comic-Con HQ, I thought, okay, that sounds interesting, that sounds interesting, and that sounds interesting. And then when we went, and we're going to be putting all the panels from Comic-Con online finally on Comic-Con HQ. That's when to me, you sold me. I'm in. I want to be involved in this.
All right, guys, so there you go. Go check that out. John, once again, thank you very much. Appreciate everything that you've obviously done for Schmoes and for Collider. And you can see John and I argue every week on Jedi Council. So that's it. Thank you guys for checking out episode 2 of the Harloff Podcast. Make sure that you rate, comment, obviously subscribe to this. This is what helps us do more of these shows, helps us rise in the rankings, helps us keep all of our shows on the air, because you guys have been doing that indeed. I loved all the comments that I saw last week from the show. We'll get John on again, I promise, and you'll also see him commentating. If you're checking out this show today, he's going to be doing the commentating for my match against Andy Signor in the Schmodown, which comes up this Friday. It's this Friday, and it is going to be a bloodbath. All right, guys, thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time, Mother Fs.